Good evening, everyone. I am your host and instructor, Laney Shaughnessy, and welcome to Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. Spindle TV is brought to you by Digital Woodcarver, inspiring your creativity and providing you with the tools to create your own unique masterpieces. Hello. How is everybody doing today? Hope you're doing well. Got a fun little project for you. We're going to, sorry I haven't shaved and all, but we're going to work with a variety of different array tools, that are at our disposal to create some really unique effects for different designs. And we might be creating border effects or panels for various projects, or we could be using the array tools to create game boards and things like that. I'm going to show you how to draw vectors and how to duplicate or multiply those vectors to create some really nice, visually nice patterns and things, which would be pretty cool. So hopefully you enjoy that and things go well. Alrighty. So let's give it just a few minutes for everybody to get started, and we should be good to go. Bum, 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 bum. Well, welcome all Jim and Dave and Mike and Sylvia and Robert, Kevin, Alan. Welcome. Good to see you here. I don't have my gears plugged in. I should plug my gears in so they move. Give y'all something visually to look at. Give y'all something visual to look at in the background. That way you're not paying attention to me. Okay. Good evening, William. Good evening, everybody. It's gonna be it's a pretty cool. And once you see this, it opens up all kinds of possibilities as far as kind of creative juices flowing. Like, oh man, what can I make and what can I do with that and everything. And that's the exciting part, because when you see the patterns start to emerge from the various arrays or whatever it is you might be doing, then it's like, okay, I get it now, and so I'm hoping that's what we end up with and all that. Hey, Stephen Rice. Hey, Dave Gatton. How you doing, buddy? James, welcome. Everybody, welcome. All right, let's get off of me for a bit. Before I do get off me, let me make a couple of announcements. And this is more so for the Digital Woodcarver CNC owners and all. You guys and girls that are planning on attending the Easton, PA Digital Woodcarver User Group meeting in June, coming up, 21st and 22nd. If you want to order things, to be picking up at the show and stuff, they're going, I put that coupon code out for you guys and girls and everything in the Digital Woodcarver Owners Facebook group. Also, I'm going to be reaching out to you individually. Think about this. If you are attending that Easton, PA conference and you would like to have a section of time to demonstrate something or to go over something that maybe a lesson that you would like to share with the rest of the group or whatever, definitely reach out to me. We have 2 time slots open, and we would love to have someone kind of be a guest speaker and all that. But I will I'll get with you individually, and that I'll be sending out an email probably tomorrow. And if you're interested, definitely reply back. I'd love to fill those 2 time slots with 2 attendees to talk about something that they're passionate about. All right. with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get over to our computer screen. Get rid of that tunnel effect and everything. Hey, Ken Singleton, how you doing, buddy? All right, let's get into it. Let's get into it. As you can see here on the screen, this is an example of one of those unique patterns. This is one of the patterns I'm going to show you how to make from scratch and everything. But imagine, you know, just looking at it, some really unique things happening here, and I'm going to show you how they're made and how to create different things like this just from scratch, from general shapes and stuff, to really create some elegant wall art, or maybe raised panels for something. The front of a, let's say you're going to build a dresser and you want the front of your drawers to have something like this. You know, imagine, you know, something along those lines. Really cool stuff. All right, so let's get into this, and let's move this out of the way. And let's move this to a new layer, and I'm going to call this sample project. And I'm going to turn that layer visibility off. So I'm moving it to a new layer, turning that visibility off, and I've named that layer so that way it'll go away. And you can see on the screen here, I've got some various shapes and things. We're going to work with these shapes to create a very unique pattern in itself. Hey, welcome, Michael Dean. And then we're going to create some new ones and all. But let's talk about, before we get into it, let's talk about our different array tools. So we have our array copy tool. With the array copy tool, you can create multiples of a vector or vectors or a project. Now, one of the newest things that became available in the Vectric 9.5 within VCard Pro and Aspire, I think it's in desktop too. I'm not sure. Someone can correct me on that and all, but it's the array copy toolpath tool. Array copy toolpath tool, which means unlike the array copy tool on the drawing side where you create multiples of a design, you can create one, create the toolpaths for that one, and then you can array all of those toolpaths. That way, if you have to make a change in the toolpath, you're only changing one item, and then it updates that array of toolpaths. It updates that entire array of whatever you have. An example would be, let's say that I'm, you know, pocketing out this little square here, and I could use the array copy tool, and I could lay out, you know, 4 rows, 3 columns with a y of you know, 0.125. Let's make that a 0.125, and an x of 1 inch, and I could let's try that again. Let's do gap. There we go. Okay, and then now I've got, you know, those multiple parts and everything, and if I created a toolpath on them and I pocketed them, if I needed to change, let's say I wanted radiuses on these corners instead of square corners, then I would have to you know, create the radius on all of these parts. Well, with the array copy tool, if I come in and let's say I create a toolpath on this, and I'll go 1/8 of an inch deep, and I'll use my 1/8 inch end mill for right now, just, you know, for this, and calculate this toolpath, and let's reset this preview and everything, and let's preview that little pocket cut we just made. Well, now I could take that selected toolpath there, and I could array it and say, okay, I want 3 rows, let's go 4 columns, and I want a gap between these parts of 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch, and I could calculate this array, and you know, I could preview that array of toolpaths. And so now let's say that, oh, you know what? I actually want to radius the corners. Well, all I have to do in that case is come in and go into my tool and, you know, create my radius of whatever it may be and recalculate. And then all I have to do now is come over and recalculate those toolpaths. Now, of course, it's going to recalculate my VCard as well. Let's turn that off. But now my entire array is updated, and you know, when I'm in my preview and stuff, and I preview that selected toolpath, now all of my parts have those radiuses. So I only had to change one part. So that's the array toolpath tool. I don't want to get that confused with the array tools that are in the design side. Now, the array toolpath tool is a really nice thing when you do have one part or one thing that you're making and you need to make, you're going to end up cutting multiples of this out of one sheet of something. You can array that toolpath, you know, all the toolpaths. If you, even if this project, if that square was a pocket with a V-carve with something in the middle, whatever the case may be, and I had, you know, 6 toolpaths, I would select those and I could array all of those toolpaths and it would update, you know, that entire array. So it's a really nice functional tool and everything when you have multiple parts and stuff. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. What we're talking about is the array tools. So let's get rid of this and let's reset this preview. Let's go back over here and let's talk about our array tools. Now, with the array toolpath, you know, we can create basically a grid of array, and we can offset, we can displace those rows or columns to help us create our grid or pattern in whatever case it may be. And you're going to see that we're going to be using the displacement part of this as well, and you're going to see how that displacement affects the design and stuff. We'll start out with the basics and then we'll get into making our shapes and all. But that's an array, it's a grid. Think of the grid, whether those rows are nice and uniform or if they're offset a bit or things are switched around, it's still a grid. We have our circular array. The circular array is one of my favorite array tools, especially when I'm making things like clocks and all. When I'm working with a clock, let's say, for instance, and everything, I can come in and I will use my, let's get in the center here, and I'll make a single line. That's going to represent my 12 o'clock mark here. And let's get all of this centered on our board. Now, you'll notice I didn't go to anything to hit center. I used the shortcut key of F9 on the keyboard to center to material. Whatever vectors are selected and everything. But you can also use your alignment tool over under the transform objects menu to do the same thing, align to material center. Now with this, you know, I can take this clock hand here, or this line that I'm going to use for my clock hands and stuff, and I can use my circular array, and I want to you know, rotate or revolve around center of my material. And so let's say that I want 12 copies of this going 360 degrees around. I can create those 12 placeholders. I call them placeholders, those lines for those clock hands. And now I can come in, and if I wanted to, you know, let's say that, you know, I had my numbers here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'll just do 6 for right now for this demonstration. And let's get them up to about 1 inch tall. I can take my numbers now and let's move them off to the side here. And I can break up that text block into individual lines. And what these lines do is they give me a point to snap to. So I can snap my numbers you know, to the center line or to the center of that line that I've allowed, you know, and it helps me kind of with my clock layout, so on and so forth. And of course, I know the numbers aren't in the right place for a clock. It would be 12, 1, 2, 3, but I'm just, you know, I'm using this as an example. But I use those lines to help me lay things out. And it really is pretty cool because let's say, as an example, let's say that this object here rotated. Okay, let's say this object rotated. And no matter where the numbers are and everything, I need those numbers to be vertical. I need them to be vertical, not, in their tilted fashion that they are, right? Well, what would happen if let's undo taking those numbers off for a minute, and what would happen if I came in to my rotate box and I took the basic angle that I need, and I said, okay, let's put the 1, and I know the 1 goes over here, so let's put the 1 in the proper place, but I want it to be, where it's vertical. So what if I go 360 degrees divided by 12? And I hit equals here. That's going to give me my angle of rotation. Now when I click apply, okay, and first of all, when you do that, make sure you're rotating off the center. There we go. Now when I click apply, oh, son of a gun. Let's try that one more time. Let's grab that circle. All right. Now when I click apply, my lines are going to rotate. Now you're not seeing anything happen. Well, let's put a number in here. Let's come over here and let's stick that number 1 there. And let's go ahead and select our circle with that number 1 and click apply again. Now I've got my next line in place, and I can drop my number 2 in there, select my entire design, and rotate again. And I can get my number 3 in there, and get that number 3, snap it in there, so on and so forth. And I can create this, and what I usually do after a while, I group if I have a lot of them, especially if I'm making some kind of wheel, and I can keep rotating, all the way around, so that no matter where my numbers are, as I rotate around those spots and everything, when my numbers end up in this one spot here, they always end up vertical, no matter what position they're in. And so making like a little a timer, perpetual calendar, things like that, that's how I utilize the array tool. It helps me kind of lay things out and stuff. So the circular array tool, there's a lot of very cool things that we can do with it. I use it a lot for clocks, but also for general shapes as well. And let's one last example on this. I'm going to take a 2-inch diameter circle here, and I'm going to move it up from 0, because right now I'm at 0, 0 on my board. I'm at the center of my board, my position, but I'm going to move it up 1 inch. So I want to move it up here. And so I'm going to go into my move tool, and I'm going to relatively move it 1 inch up on that Y. And now I'm going to take and go into my circular array tool, and making sure that I'm revolving around center, I'm going to make 5 copies of this circle, and I'm going to go 360 degrees around. And what I've ultimately ended up with here is the flower of life. It's got many names and everything. But, I can now take this shape here, and with this shape, I can create all kinds of neat little geometrical patterns and stuff. I can create very cool VCards. If I offset this shape, if I offset it inward 1/16 of an inch, I can create some internal vectors. Now notice on my shapes, and this is one of the weird things about the when you offset a circular array like this that has all these overlapping lines, it always leaves some of the shapes out, that it copies. But we have a very useful tool that can help us fix that issue, and it's our mirror tool. So within our mirror tool, we have a cool tool here called flip about line. And so basically I need a line, right? Well, basically I need this object to copy over here. So I'm going to draw a line right in that center point. So if I come over here and I snap to my center and I draw a line splitting that V right there, I can now take this shape, select my line last, and I can mirror that, flipping it about that line to put that shape where it belongs. I can take that line there, and I could just rotate it around. If I can use my rotate tool, and if I take my pivot point and I change the pivot point to 12.5 and 9, that should give me a pivot point of here, if I'm not mistaken. Let's find out. No. Let me find out what my center is. 12.5 and 9.5. There we go. I can now take and I can rotate that line around wherever I need. So if I come here and split this, I can now take that shape, select my line, and once again I can mirror flipping about that line. And then one last time we'll take and rotate around to this line intersection, and one last time I can take those two items and flip them about that line to fill in those blanks. And so but it's a really weird thing. And so this in itself would be a pretty cool little VCard pattern. But if I take and look at the size of this, what is the size of this? It is 3.89 inches high. Okay, so if I group all of this together and I move it relative to its position on that Y, that distance divided by 2 equals, and then that brings that part above my 0, 0, and I could go into my circular array once again with this part selected. I could make 5 more copies of this flower to create some really unique patterns. Now, of course, if I wouldn't have offset this, it would look a little bit more recognizable. So if I came back in here and I got rid of those offsets and just had my flower of life here, and let's find out what the size of this one is. The height is 3.809, so I'm going to copy that value. It helps me with the move, and I can move that, paste that value in there, and again divide it by 2 because I need the half of it, and I can move it up. And then if I take this shape and revolve it around my center point, we can start to create more and more geometric patterns and things, which these are the individual flowers of life that you would see in here. And you would have to go and trim overlaps and things like that and all that stuff away and all to get this shape to look like something that you'd be able to use. But I love the circular array tool. It's very cool. Our last array tool that we're going to be talking about tonight is going to be the copy vectors along a vector. So copy one vector along a path of another. And this one is, I primarily use this one solely for the purpose of making cribbage boards and things like that, where I have to copy along a path, or like the aggravation marble game and stuff. And imagine if I had like for the aggravation game, imagine if I had a 5-point star. So let's get that in there, and let me center that, F9, center that on my board, and I take a circle and draw a circle. Let's make it let's see here, we'll go 3/8 inch diameter circle, like a little marble pocket that we're going to do. I can now take this circle and copy it along the vector of this star pattern, creating a certain space distance between each part, or just a number of copies, however many, if it's 36, if it's 40, whatever it may be. And I could do it either way. And in my case, I'll space it 1 marble distance apart, so that way when I copy, I get this kind of array here. And what I'm actually going to do is, let's when it stops, when it stops that pattern, let's undo that and let's double that. Let's go 0.75, and let's do that one more time. Create a little bit better spacing and all. Now, if I need my circle to end up right at the point here, then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to have it off in the distance like this. I'm going to take my circle and I'm going to snap it where it needs to go, and then I should be able to, you know, create my copy. It's gonna I'm not gonna force even spacing. Hold on a second. Let's uncheck that. Don't you give me a hard time there, circular array. And we get rid of this guy, and we can create, and so we're off a little bit on the corners, but we would end up adjusting our, you know, wherever we needed to and whatever our spacing was to get that. You'd measure your star properly so that you always end up with one that lands on the corner. But you get the idea, right? You know, we can use that copy array tool. Now I use this mostly for cribbage boards, and you know, when I have to have a pattern that I follow, no matter what the shape of my cribbage board is. And let me real quick, let me create a some curved edges here on this pattern and stuff. Let's go 0.25. Get rid of these sharp points and these sharp turns and all. When I'm creating a cribbage board, whatever the shape may be, and this is just an example and stuff, I usually have, you know, the 1/8 inch hole, the 1/8 inch circle. And what I end up doing with that is I use a rectangle or a line. We can use a line. I'll just use a line here, and I'm going to draw a 1 inch line, so 90 degrees, and I want 1 inch. And if I take these 3 circles, or 1 circle, and I make it 3 by holding my control key down and creating 3 circles here. If I select all 3 of those circles first and then select this line last, I can use my alignment tool to center them on that line. And they're all stacked on top of each other right now, but I can force spacing, and I can space them equal distance on that line, within that line. And I can now group those objects together. And now I have a path or a raceway to follow. So with my align tool, I can select that group that I just grouped together, select my path here, and I want to curve. Let's force even spacing on that one, and I want 120 copies. And my star is way too small for this, but that's okay. My star is way too small. I'd have to make it a little bit bigger for an actual, you know, proper size cribbage board. But now I've got that, you know, raceway of those cribbage holes around that path. I've got some overlapping ones here, so I would make my star a little bit bigger so they did not overlap on these edges and stuff. But with this small of a star, that's, you know, what's to be expected. And then, you know, from there I'd create my start and finish lines and all my V carving and all that stuff. But that's how I would use the copy along vector array tool, which is, you know, fascinating. You know, for me, it's an easy way to create all different types of, you know, to create, have one object follow another. Creating multiple copies, or even spacing, or a certain distance between, whatever the case may be. So very useful. But I want to talk to you about the copy array tool today on creating some unique patterns for panels, for borders, for wall art, for whatever the case may be. And I want to utilize some of the vectors that we have going on here. Now, what you'll see here is I've drawn a heart, somewhat of a heart, and let's kind of focus on this heart. And you'll notice that the vector right next to it is a double heart, right? Basically, all I've done is I've drawn my heart shape out here, and then I went into my mirror tool, and with that vector selected, making sure that I'm making a copy, I just click the bottom button here to flip it down. And once I've created that design, now I can join and close those two individual vectors into one to create that shape. Okay, and this is, you know, just a certain shape. Now, what can we do with this shape to create a unique pattern? Well, one of the things that we can do is, and I'll just work with one. One of the things that we can do is, I'm going to make a copy of this, and if you don't know, there's a couple of ways of making copy. You can use the copy and paste tool over here in the menu, also in the edit, you know, copy and paste. You can right click and copy and paste, or you can just double click on a vector, hold down your control key, and drag a copy off. Okay, and you can do that multiple times. Now in this particular copy, I'm actually going to rotate it 90 degrees, and that rotate, I could have come into the rotate tool, and off of its center I could have typed in 90 and clicked apply. But also I can use my number 9 key to rotate counterclockwise, and my number 0 key to rotate clockwise. So 0 is a clockwise rotation in 45-degree increments, and the number 9 key is counterclockwise in 45-degree increments. Okay? All right. Now, with this, let's go ahead, and what I want to do is I want to I'm going to use my guidelines here, and I'm going to snap to the corner of this one vector, and I want to move this guy over to where this corner is on that guideline as well. It's going to create my spacing between the two parts. And so if I hold down my alternate key when I'm grabbing, I'm going to grab this corner point here, and if I hold my alt key while I'm dragging, it's going to give me that line. You see that guideline here that pops up and everything? It's going to give me that line. So that way I don't shift off of center and stuff and everything. Now, and let's move this guy out of the way. We're going to talk about him in just a moment. All right, so now I've got this shape. All right, so what can come of this? What pattern can we make? Well, let's look at the array tool, and let's look at a couple of measurements first off, okay? We need to get some measurements of things to find out, you know, what I do. Imagine if, and let me make a copy of both of these. I'm not going to use the array tool. I'm just going to make a copy just to illustrate this so you understand what's happening. I'm going to drag a copy of this up, but I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to space it about the same spacing that it is. And you can see by that movement and everything, we've got a pattern that's starting to emerge. So we've got a pattern that's starting to emerge in everything and all. And, you know, with a copy of 2, you know, we don't really see that pattern. But once we start to multiply it, it really starts to come about. So let's look at how we can use the array tool to help us with that. And the first thing I need to do is I need to know some measurements of my part. So let's go into our dimension tool. And what I'd like to do on this part is I'm going to take a horizontal dimension from the center of my original part to the center of the sideways, the 90-degree part. And I want to get that number. That's going to be a number that I'm going to be using here in just a moment for my array tool. Okay. Now, I also need to know that what my spacing is between this kind of these two curves, if you will. And if I were to take and do a vertical measurement from, let's try to find our midpoint here and all, we're about 0.088. So we'll write that number down, you know, and stuff. So these are really the only two measurements that I need, minus the measurement, the all-important measurement is how tall is this part? What's the height of this part, from top to bottom? So let's go into the size tool and just look at it here, and it's 4.8814. Okay, and that's a number that I want to write down. So I have a little notepad at my computer, and I'm going to write that number down, 4.8814. And I also write down the width of this part, 2.8155. Okay, that's my two numbers that I need, and along with these two numbers, and that's going to help me with determining what my spacing and all should be. So let's look at our copy array tool here, and what I'm going to do is let's start out small. I'm going to create one column and two rows of this combined shape. And let's get rid of these numbers. I don't think it would multiply the dimensions, but let's get rid of those. And I've gotten them written down and everything, which is going to be important for me in a minute. But with those two shapes here, I want an offset from the bottom of one part to the bottom of another part that's going to be created. I want that offset, not a gap. I don't want the gap or the space between. A gap would be the distance between here and here, between one side and the other. I want the offset. And that offset is going to be that middle space from the center to center, which was the 2.946. That 2.946. And here, let me undo my measurements just so you know where that number come from, that 2.946. Okay? That offset, 2.946. That's where that number's coming from. I want it there because basically I'm moving the center of this object over to the center of this object on my x-axis. I'm moving the center of this object over to the center of this object on my x-axis. Now mind you, it's going to be up a little bit. It's going to be up in here in this void and all, but that's the distance I need it to move. And so we've got that measurement there. Now as far as the height is concerned, that measurement is my 2.8155. If you recall, that was the height of this shape here. Okay, and then I'm gonna add my 0.088, I believe. I think it's either going to be that or the actual spacing that I want. We're going to find out here in 2 seconds when I hit equals. And that is not the correct spacing. I want 2.8155 plus 0.125 equals. There you go. I want 1/8 of an inch spacing in between these parts. So it's not this number, this 0.088. Let's kind of get rid of that. I don't want that confusing the issue. We don't necessarily need to know that. I need to know the spacing between the parts that I want, and I want my 1/8 of an inch. Now, one thing that's very absolute important is that I make sure that when I snap here that my corners are perfectly aligned up. That's going to be important for the symmetry of this piece. Okay, so do all of you have this 2.946? You know where that's coming from, that number, because I'm going to delete it. It's from here, the center of my part upright versus the center of my part vertically. So we're going to get rid of that. And now let's go ahead and let's go into our array tool. So I'm going to do just two, just to start off small, so you can see how how this works. 2 rows. So I'm going to have 2 rows, but just 1 column. And I'm going to move over that distance that I need to, so that part lands here. And I'm going to move up the full distance, the full height, plus 1/8 of an inch of my part. And so if I click copy right now, nothing happens, right? It doesn't land where it needs to be. It doesn't do anything for me. That's because I have no displacement of these rows. All this is doing is it's bringing these parts up, putting an eighth, it's creating two rows, creating an eighth of an inch apart, you know, from them, which causes these parts to, you know, overlap and everything. It's not giving me what I need. I need to displace this. I need to move this over. So if I undo this, I have to use my row and column displacement. And so I want to displace that same distance, 2.946 and 2.9405. I want to displace the same as my offset. So that way when I copy this, it throws that shape right where it needs to be. It displaces it over and up. So it's my displacement. Okay? So hopefully you can see that. Now, let's get this pattern rocking. Let's go 8 rows, 8 columns. Okay? 8 rows and 8 columns. We're going to offset the distance of that center point and plus the height and my eighth of an inch. But then I need to displace those rows over that same distance. So let's go ahead and let's click copy now, and you can see a beautiful pattern start to emerge. Now, I mean, just this nice flowing lines and things and shapes within shapes that, you know, you really can't see when it's just one, you know, when you're looking at just this general shape here, you know, even starting with this heart and taking the action of doubling that heart to bring down, you know, to create this shape here, and then taking and creating that shape and making a copy of it and just rotating it ever so slightly, lining things up. You don't see what could come until you really create that entire array. Now I'm going to take my rectangle tool, and what I'm going to do with my rectangle tool is I'm going to split one of these right here on this heart, and I'm going to draw over. Let's split to here, and I'm going to come down to trying to snap to that point there. Okay, now what does this rectangle do for me? Well, let's close this array tool here. This rectangle gives me a border. It gives me a border to cut to. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of this array except for my rectangle. I need to deselect it. Hold your shift key down, turn the rectangle off, and I need to group these objects together. You know, sometimes you may want to group, sometimes you don't. In this case, I'm going to group. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to, with those selected first, I can come now into my rectangle tool and select that last. And I can come over to my trim tool, not my scissor, not my interactive trim tool, but my trim tool. My trim tool allows me to trim vectors from within side or outside of a border. And not only does it trim them, but it closes them off. It doesn't create open vectors. And so I can come in and I want to clear everything outside of my border. My border is the last object I selected. And if you recall, that last object was that rectangle. And so now I can come over and I can clear, and look what happens. Not a very desired result, right? Well, that's because it doesn't know how to handle the group. And also, one of the main things it does is there were duplicates. When we created our array, and let me ungroup these so you can see. When we created our array, we created duplicates. And as you notice when I click on this, notice how we have a pink line with a blue line behind it. And those duplicates are kind of throwing things off. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, because they're stacking on top of each other and all. And so what we need to do first off is we need to, from the get-go, right out of the gate, we need to right-click. So let's start over. We've created our array. We've got our boundary. Now we're going to just right click anywhere in open space, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to right click and selection and select all of those duplicates. And you'll see a nice highlight of kind of pink and blue, right? So all those duplicates. All we're going to do from there is we're going to right click and we're going to delete those duplicates. Get rid of them. We don't need them anymore. Or we don't need them. They're not supposed to, they're not supposed to be there. Okay? So now I can select my objects. And if I group those together, oops, don't want the rectangle in there. If I group those together, grouping them and subtracting that group from here, I should now be able to use that subtract tool and it remove things correctly, right? It clears to that border. It didn't clear correctly before because of the duplicates. So you're always going to have duplicates when you're creating an array in some way or another. In a lot of cases, not always. That's a terrible way to say it, not always. But in cases like this, when you're creating these unique patterns and all, you're going to end up with duplicates. So you want to get rid of them. Okay. All right. So now that we've cleared this array pattern to a boundary, now we've got a nice uniform pattern here. Let's go ahead and get this on the board and everything. And I'm going to center it. So I'm going to hit my F9 key to center to my material. And then my border was just a border to trim to. I want to delete, or not, I don't want to delete that border this way. I want to delete it by doing an offset. I want to offset a certain distance away. And I believe I want to offset 1/8 of an inch. 1/4 of an inch. Let's double it. I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch outward on that rectangle. And I want to delete the original. Okay. So that way I end up with kind of a nice little border around my design. Now let's go in and V-carve this and let's see what we end up with. So if I come in here and I select this and I go into my V-carve toolpath, I'm going to go a start depth of 0, no flat depth. I'm using a 60-degree V-bit. I'm going to calculate this path and we can preview this cut to reveal what you saw when we opened up this program to begin with, that nice, very cool pattern. You know, that nice, unique, and very cool pattern and stuff. Bear with me one second. Let me, Burl Tishner, owner of the company, asked me a quick question. Let me answer that real quick. Correct. Not at this time. I'll keep trying. There we go. All right. So, you know, you can see I mean, imagine this if we were to carve this, and it could be carved a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to be like this. I mean, we don't need that border. We could reverse carve it. Let me show you what would happen if we reverse carve it, meaning if I don't have this outside border selected and I calculate this tool path, it's going to cut through the material. So I have to set a flat depth. Let me set a flat depth. Let's go 0.25. 0.25 and click calculate. It's going to create a reverse of what it was if we revisit. And I probably should have used a flat area clearance tool, but that's okay. This is just for demonstration purposes only. Okay. Now notice that some of the vectors, we have a unique result happening here in the pattern. These anomalies. I call them anomalies because, you know, we have this this heart cut out, this one's not, so on and so forth. We could look into the pattern itself and see what may have caused that anomaly. If I split this up a side-by-side view, let's see here. Let's go side by side. It's the top second one in. The top second one in, which would be this one right here. You know, this particular pattern, because it is, I can't really specify because it is, I think it's because I have, let me see if I can trim away. Oh wait, is it grouped? Hold on. Let me look and see if, no, that's closed off. Let's look and see if we have any open vectors. Select all open vectors. None. All right. So we have a little bit of an anomaly here. Every couple of ones, it's kind of creating this pattern, but we can address that another time. I'd have to diagnose what may be the cause and effect. Let's see, if I grab this guy, it would be carving between there, skipping here, and then it's carving like there's an anomaly in there. What is that? What is that? Here's one way for me to find out. Check off your toolpath. Check off your toolpath and go into solid view. And you can see here that there is an open vector of sorts because my tool is not seeing this as a closed vector. It's seeing it as open. So it's seeing it as an individual. This line is individual from this line. So with that being, or now that we, now that we see that and everything, let's see if the software will detect that in another way. Let's grab, turn that off. Let's grab this shape here and let's look at our join tool, and it shows as one closed vector, but I'm thinking it's going to be in the way how deep that V goes. So let me do this. I'm going to go into node editing. I'm going to trim the vector back. I'm going to cut it here. And cut that vector. Let me delete that. And I'm going to join this by bringing those two ends together again. Now, I don't know if that will resolve that, but let's take a look. Let's do the same down here just for symmetry. Get rid of that. Bring that together. Calculate that toolpath. And there we go. Let's reset the preview and preview the selected toolpath. And this is the heart here where my black mouse is. that was the heart there that did not carve out properly before. But by trimming up those edges and rejoining the two ends, you know, and you can see that that's occurring on every one of those ends of those hearts. So what I would probably do is I'd probably go back to my original design and change the shape of that heart just ever so slightly to make my V not so long and narrow down there and stuff and everything to Anomaly, because it's picking it up in certain areas and not others. But regardless, let's come over here and select the entire design. Take my line here and offset it back outward, 1/4 of an inch. Delete the original. And let's go back in there and no flat depth on this and just calculate that toolpath again with that first pattern. So let's see here. Jerry, that is pretty sweet right there. I wanted to do some new designs for some boxes. Can you add a little more to the depth? Absolutely, Alan. We can always add more to the depth. You know, you can absolutely add more to the depth. I just set a flat depth and everything. And if you want more depth in here, you know, in this normal V-carve here, put more than 1/8 of an inch spacing. Okay, increase your spacing ever so slightly. You know, because you know you're only going to get depth to whatever you specify here, or give yourself a start depth. Now, I did a rectangle, but Jerry Brown brings up a you know a good thing. He's talking about like designs for boxes and things. Okay, well a box normally, and let's kind of a box normally would have a what, you know, a jewelry box would normally have like a 3-inch box size or what have you. And let me center that rectangle on the material, F9. And so if I took my array here, I don't need this rectangle selected. If I took my array and I selected it and then selected, and I could group it together, doesn't matter. But if I select my rectangle last and I come in here and do that subtract again, you know, I can create a, you know, pretty cool pattern for a box. Now, of course, I wouldn't want the pattern running all the way to the edge of the box. So my box sides would most likely would be offset. Let's take my rectangle here and offset it outward a 1/2 inch. 0.5, and I want sharp corners, dadgummit. Well, I won't get sharp corners because I got radius corners on those squares, but nevertheless, and let's delete the original, you know, and now I've got a pretty cool panel for a, you know, a box side. So if I were to V-carve that, calculate, reset that preview, you know, I could have that 3-inch tall, you know, panel. And then of course, whatever the case may be, let's go now and create our actual box size. Bear with me a second. And I want square corners on that one. And I want it centered, so F9, center that up. And if I do, oops, close that tool and undo that. If I take and do my profile cut now, you know, cutting that part out, whatever the case may be, you know, I could have a nice, you know, side, or imagine it for a lid of a box or something like that. Now, let's get into some other designs. I'm going to bring this back to this full panel, and let's delete that. and let's look at some other designs. So we're going to get to this leaf here in a minute. It's going to go with what I'm about to make, but for this design, and I'll do it on the whiteboard so we can all see it on the whiteboard, but for this design, I want to draw a 3-inch diameter circle. 3-inch diameter circle, and I'll click here. And I want to take a line and snap a line right in the center of that circle, and I'm going to go up. Oh, right about there. Looks good to me. Oops, not over. Undo that last one. There we go. I'm going to draw a line there. Now, on this line, I want to create another 3-inch circle, and I want to go about 1/8 of an inch, right? I want to go about 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do, or not 1/8 of an inch, let's go a quarter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my guidelines to help me out here. So on my guideline, I'm going to make a relative, I've snapped it to the top of this circle, and I'm going to make a relative guide a 1/4 inch up, okay, 1/4 inch up, and create a new guide. And then I'm going to delete that original guide because this is going to be my main guide here, okay? And what I want to do is now I'm at 3 1/4, right? 3 inches is the diameter of my circle plus that 1/4 of an inch. So if I right click on this guideline and make a relative guide 3.25 and I click select new, I can just click here, and let's zoom out so you can see this. Create new guide, and let's close that so we can zoom out. And you can see these guidelines being drawn and everything. They're going to help me with my layout here in just a second and stuff. So let's go one more. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to take this circle, and with it in transform mode, I'm going to grab the very bottom center of that circle. I'm going to hold down my control key, and I'm going to drag it and snap it to that guideline. And I'm going to do that one more time. Hold that control key down and drag and snap it to that guideline. One more time. Hold down the control key, grab it at the bottom, and snap it to that guideline. Okay? You with me so far on that? Oops, you might have lost me there for a minute. We might have went black screen. Did y'all still see me? Save early and save often. Absolutely. Let's save. Okay. It's working with arrays, so let it update that. Thank you, William. Thank you, William. Yep, Sylvia's got a tornado warning out. There we go. Be careful, Sylvia. All right, so now I've got my circles here and everything. Now, what I want to do is I want to trim this line away from the top. I want the circles to go top to bottom with this line. And now we're going to do some trimming. And you're going to start to see this image start to, or this pattern start to emerge as I trim. So we're going to trim opposites, okay? Right side, center. Left side, center. Right side, center. Left side, center. Okay? Let's get rid of these guidelines. Let's turn them off for a minute. And you can see this kind of unique pattern. Okay? Now let's take this pattern here and let's offset it. Let's offset it outward 1/4 of an inch. And create sharp corners, select new. Okay? So now, starting to see a little bit of a shape there. You got this nice little pattern going. Maybe you don't see it yet. Here, let's do this. Let's take this and let's go to our mirror tool and let's flip it to the right. Okay? Now do you see a nice little pattern in here? Now what happens if I took this this pattern and I just kept flipping it to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right? You know, now I end up with, you know, this pattern here, and let's center this up and everything. And now to get this nice kind of pointed round diamond shape, whatever you want to call it, here to occur up here, if I mirrored this, right? If I mirrored this, if I just selected all these and I flip to the top, well, we create a funkiness right here. We don't get that nice unique pattern, right? Because it should be half and half, right, to create that ongoing pattern. So what I want to do is now that I have a pattern here, and I could have done this with just the two, okay? And let's do that. Let's undo this. Let's get back to just the two, okay? And get it centered up here. Now if I come in and if I use my node editing, or heck, even easier, if I take and snap a line right to the center to center here, right? And over here as well, down here, center to center. And I come in and I start some trimming. Let's get rid of those lines, get rid of those lines, and of course, get rid of those lines. We need it open, right? We need it open so everything joins together. Same thing down here. Let's get rid of this and come in here and trim that away. So we got this pattern here. Now, if I were to flip this or mirror this, and we're going to use the array tool instead, but if I were to flip this up, now it's starting to look symmetrical, right? And if I were to take and to flip that to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right, you can see this ever so emerging pattern start to occur. But there's a lot of dead space in here. Right? That's where this leaf is going to come in handy in just a moment. We're going to make something to fill these centers and all. But let's go ahead and let's get back to our two. Right? Let's get back to our two that we've trimmed up and cleaned up now. So we've got our starting pattern. We've got our starting pattern for our array. To create our array and everything. And of course, you can size it to whatever size you want. It depends on how big this pattern needs to be. Of course, I could size it down and I could create, however big of, a part that I need. I'm just working with big parts here just to show you things that occur. But now let's go to our array tool. And how can our array tool help us out? Well, we need a couple of measurements. Okay? So first things first is if I look at up here at the top, this tells me the size 6.5101, 9.75. It tells me the size of my selected object here. So I can use that. I can use that size to help me out with my offset and my gap and things like that and all. Now, in the case of this array, I don't want really any displacement. I don't want really any displacement, except for I need to kind of change the way my parts get created. Because if I come in here and say, okay, 0.5101, 9.75, and I'm just going to create 2 rows and 2 columns for now. Start off small. Okay. If I do that, well, my pattern doesn't come out right. Now the side to side pattern comes out exactly how it needs to. Okay. The 2 columns came out right, but my rows, my 2 rows, row 1 and row 2 up above here, didn't. It needs to be inverted. It needs to be flipped. So if I go back to this, I have my symmetry here. So my symmetry, notice all the parts are coming out, the same. And I need that second row. This is the rows, right? 2 rows, 2 columns, okay? But I need that symmetry to change. I need it to flip, okay? I need it to flip. So that way when I create that copy, it brings those patterns together the way it should. You with me there? So no matter what I do, no matter how many rows or copies that I make, and let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Now if I change my size here, I got to change my size and my offsets and everything, but I want to make it a little bit smaller so that I can kind of get it up on the board. Put it right there in the corner for right now. And my size here of my selected object is 3.9985 by 5.9985. So I need to make that change, okay? 3.9985 by 5.9885. My symmetry is reversed. So now when I come in here and I do, 6 rows and 6 columns and everything, my pattern is going to land and come out correctly. Right? No displacement left or right or up and down was needed for this particular pattern. Right? Okay, let's undo that. I want to get back here because I want to get into this leaf, right? What is this leaf for, Laney? I see this leaf there. What is that? What was that? What's the purpose of it? Well, this leaf, making it earlier and stuff, basically it could be anything, right? It could be, whatever it wants. I just used a leaf. And remember the circular array tool? Remember the circular array tool that we talked about earlier? I'm going to use this, the circular array tool to help me create this pattern. So first thing is first is I want to create a circle. And, however big you want that circle to be, make it as big as you want. I'm going to go with a 1-inch diameter. And one of the things that I want to do is I want to make a copy and paste. Okay? No, I don't want to make a don't do that. Don't copy and paste. Who in the world's talking there, Laney? What I want to do is with this circle here is I want to use my trim tool that we used earlier for subtracting one object from another. And so I want to subtract this object from this circle. And when I use that subtract tool, I want to clear inside of the boundary. Basically inside of the circle. The circle is what I selected last. And what that's going to do for me is that's going to close off. If I move that circle out of the way, you can see that it's closed off that vector. Right? Okay. So now if I come in here and I open up my rotate tool, or my circular array tool. Let's do the circular array tool since we're talking about arrays. I could have rotated around holding my control key, but let's talk about our array tool. Notice that we have a pivot point right here. Okay, when I select this object, I have a pivot point that is going to be identified right here. And if you don't see it, click on the center square and it'll pop up. Now I can drag that pivot point anywhere that I want to. And I do. I want to drag that pivot point. I want to grab it and I want to drag it and snap to the center of my circle. Okay? And once I do that now, I have a pivot point which is at the center of my circle, and I can come in and I want 4 copies of this, pivoting 360 degrees around. Woo! That's a unique shape. Let's grab that pivot point. Let's move that pivot point down and snap to the center there. All right. I want to rotate that point, that pivot point, 4 times around my center point to create my little flower. Right? Right. Now, I don't necessarily want the flower leaves touching one another. Okay, I don't want to have to do any trimming or anything, so I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to make my circle a bit bigger. Let's make my circle a little bit bigger in size. So that way when these parts rotate around, they don't overlap as much. So I'm going to go with a 1.5 inch diameter circle. And I'm going to snap the circle down to center there and bring it down. Now notice my radius has changed of my, my leaf and everything, right? It's changed tremendously. Now I want to center these two objects up, so I'm going to hold down this object here, hold down this object, and I want to use my alignment tool to center them left to right. Make sure they are absolute center. Okay. Now that I've done that, I can select my petal first, then my circle, trim, clearing inside of that boundary. Okay, that gives me a closed vector. Now I'm going to bump my circle down just a little bit. I just don't want those vectors touching each other and stuff. Nice little, whatever kind of spacing you want, But now I'm going to come in and use my circular array tool. Click on this middle square to get my pivot point to present itself, and I'm going to snap down to the center of that circle. And I want 4 copies all the way around. It's going to create this nice little floral pattern for me. Okay. Now I'm going to size this pattern down. Hold down my shift key and I'm going to size it down. And I'm going to snap it or center it right up in to the best that I can within this part. And so I want to get centered here and everything. And there's no real sexy way of doing this, but basically if I grab this over and I snap and wake up this vector over here, I can use my smart snapping to give me that center line. And then now that I have that line, if I come over here and snap and wake up this center point down here, I can kind of get that intersection right there to snap to. So it's going to give me that perfect symmetry within. Okay. Now, since I have 1.5 designs here, I need half of this design up here, right? I need half of this design up here. So I'm going to take and select my flower pattern, double click on it and hold down my control key, and I'm going to drag a copy up. Okay, and I know what center is here and all because I could use my guideline, right? I could use a guideline and snap right down to this line, and then that will tell me where to place my flower. Right, let's select my flower here. And I could grab the center of that flower or the petal here and I could snap it down there. Heck, if I want to use a guideline over here, right, and snap it right to the center of this part, make sure that I'm centered, which I am. Guidelines are wonderful things and all that stuff. Just turn them off. All right, so now I have this flower positioned properly, but I don't need the whole thing. What I need to do is I need to, cut it in half. And for that, I'm just going to use a line and I'm just going to trim, right? Start trimming, but before I do, I got to ungroup. All right, so let's get rid of that and that half of that circle. Let's get rid of this line, that line, that line, that line, and that line. And then of course, let's get rid of this entire petal up here. So now I have my pattern. Okay, I'm going to group this together. And now I can do my array. So I want first off, I want to size this back down to my little size that I had, which was, by the way, 3.9985. Let me write that down. 3.9985 by 5.9885. I'm going to go into my size tool and type in 3.9985 and click apply because it's linked together, so you know. So now I've got this pattern here. Let's go ahead and let's array it. Let's array it. We remember our symmetry's got to be, you know, opposite. Symmetry's got to be opposite. I'm going to do 6 rows and 6 columns and make sure my offset is the same size as my board here, and go ahead and click and, you know. Now, pretty cool. But now I've got all these spaces in here, right? I've got all these spaces in here that, you know, how do I get my flowers in there, right? I could copy and paste and all that wonderful stuff and everything. I could, and let me do less rows and less columns. Let's go 3 and 3. Let's cut this in half so we can keep it on the board. My board size is not the right size for this. Let's go 1, 2. Let's go 2 and 6. 2 and 6. Oh, I should have went 3 and 6. You son of a gun. One more time. Let's go 3 and 6. There we go. All right, let's get this centered up. I'm going to select this and get it centered up on the board. F9. Okay. Now, all right. Now, of course, I could cut the bottom off to look just like the top, so we have a nice symmetrical pattern and all that stuff, but I'm not going to do that right this second. I want to talk about, all right, I've got flower, I got spots where flowers could go. I got spots where half flowers could go, and things like that, and all that wonderful jazz and stuff, right? You know, I've got all of these shapes and everything. Well, if we look closely at our design, and everything and all, we may see an emerging pattern going horizontally, not just vertically. You know, we have very similar shapes here as we do here. Matter of fact, they're exactly the same. And so it stands to reason that if I take and measure the distance horizontally from the center of my flower to the center of my part, I want to get right in there on that center and get that number, that 1.9999. We could probably say 2 and be safe with it, right? We could probably say 2 and be safe with it, but we'll go 1.999. But so my distance is 1.999. What is the odds that my distance for vertically from the center of my flower to the center of this part here? Close. No guarantee I snap right on the center, but close enough. 1.9999. We'll call it. So that means if I take my flower, let's ungroup this. If I take my flower here and I go into my grid array on that flower, and I take and put in the measurements, you know, of my offset distance, which is going to be pretty much the size of my flower, right? So 2.5322 and 2.5322. And if I'm going to do just one and one, one row, two columns, to see where we're at, right? See where that lands. Because remember, I have no displacement in here yet. So when I do that, that gets me, over that full distance, but I don't need to go that full distance, right? Because imagine if this were up, it's off kilter, right? It's basically, and let me undo this. Let me do 2 rows and 2 columns so you can see. Okay, so I need these to not be that far up. I need to, and I need them to be spread out because I want them to go from here to here, and everything and all. So I've got to, what is my distance? What does my displacement need to be? Okay, for this, flower to end up exactly where it needs to be. Well, first and foremost is by going the full distance on my offset here. Going the full distance on my offset, I've overshot it, right? And going my full distance this way, offset, I've overshot it for sure there. So I'm going to use my displacement tool to help me. So we're going to undo that, and I'm going to take my 2.5322, and I'm going to subtract. And if I'm doing this right, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't do this a whole lot often, so sometimes it slips my mind. If I do this right, if I subtract that 1.999, get my number here, that'll give me the displacement, over on my x. Let's validate that. Okay, moved it over. Let's go the full 1.999. 1.999. Okay, so that's landing where I need it to land. Okay, that's good, but it's too high. Okay, it's up too high. I need to, bring it down. I need to bring it down. So I'm gonna go with 1.999 brought me over here. 1.999 in a negative. Oh, Laney, I hope you're right. No, we don't want a negative. No, ignore everything that you just saw there. That was wrong. I knew that was wrong right when I did it. Up here in my y, because my x is over correctly using. I need a displacement in my x. My y up and down spacing is too much. So let's undo that. Okay, and let's do that again with my 1.999. Sorry about that. I don't want to confuse this. Okay, that gets my flower, right where it is. Now, of course, my spacing, my offset here, I need to find out what my measurement is from the center of one flower to the center of another, or at the very least, yes, from the center of one flower to the center of another. So let's do that. Let's get that measurement, because that's what has to go in here. Let's steal that measurement. Horizontally, center of one to the center of another. That magic number is going to be 3.999. Okay? 3.999. All right, so 3.999. I need my displacement of 1.999 down here. All right. 2 point. Oh, Laney, come on, don't you? I'm gonna kick your butt, buddy, bro. I'm gonna go 0. I'm gonna go 0 here. Bear with me a second. I'm gonna go 0. Uh, 3.999. 3.999 minus 2.5322 equals. Okay. Alrighty. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. 1.99 on the X. Hold on a second. Somebody's throwing out something. 1.999 times 2 on the X, which is the 3.999. All right. That throws me off there. That throws me off. Bear with me. All right. We can do this. We can do this. Hold on. I'm screwing myself up, and I didn't want to screw up. This was so... Oh, it was going to be such a pretty pattern. Hold on a second. My measurement from here to here, basically 3.999, that's an important number to remember. Basically, I need this measurement. I got to use guidelines to help me with that measurement. Let's get a guideline in here. Let's move that one out of the way. Let's get another guideline here. Let's take this guideline and snap it to there. Okay. Ta-da. Ta-da. Okay. So, measuring horizontally from the center here where it's moving to the center here. That's that 1.999. Now from the center here to here, 3.999. Okay. All right. So we've got some input. Nick is throwing in some input. I like it when you guys participate. So Nick is saying on my shape here, we're not going to use a displacement. He's throwing offset the X. We're going to do this 1.999 and then the Y 1.999 times 2. All right. And oh, not quite. Let's do that in the displacement. 1.999 3.998. Let's get rid of, hold on a second. Let's get rid of this displacement. Hold on, we might have had it there. Okay. All right. I need to displace the Y. This should be all right, we're almost there. Hold on a second, guys. This is a learning lesson for both of us. I had it so well done. Let's see here. I'm confusing myself. 2.5322. Okay, let me see what that gives me here. Okay, and if I offset this 1.999. Okay, it gets me about right here in the position. My offset is correct and everything, but now this distance is wrong. The Y. Three 3.999 divided by 2 equals, which is the 1.999 you still got. All right, this number is off. Let's go 1.999 times 2 times 2. Okay, so here is so I've got, let me show you what we've got going on here. Okay, so one row, one column, or I'm sorry, 2 columns. So basically 1 row, 2 columns, right? So I went up the distance, which threw me in the center perfectly here, but I need to divide by 2. I'm off that high up, and that's Y up and down. Or, yeah, Y up and down. So, let's 1.999 or 998. Bam. Okay. All right. All right. All right. So it's starting to work now. Okay. Okay, now. So 1 row, 1 column. Okay? 1 row, 1 column. Now, let's undo that and let's make this 2 rows, 3 columns. Okay, so now my displacement is kicking in. Okay, the displacement is kicking in. It's throwing things off. All right, it's jamming me up right here. Okay, now my spacing, bam to bam, here went well. Okay. So let's find out, let's back down to this, 2 and 2. Okay, my 1 flower landed correctly, but now I'm off here. I need to go up to the center of this one, 3.99 inches. Nope. 3.999 inches times 2. .99 inches. That's the displacement up, which brought me up to here. It brought me up to here. This is my first column. Okay, the displacement of the first column, and then this is my second column. So my displacement on the X is correct. The Y is wrong. 3.999. Okay, that landed me here and here. Oh, 3.998. Don't be throwing in. Nick's throwing in 998. It's 999, man. Look at that number. 999. All right, let's see here. Oh, 3.998. I wonder why it's 0.998 there. So that might help. Let's do that. We'll do 8 because that's where he's seeing the 8 from right there. All right, bear with me. 1 row, 1 column. Let's you know, the 1 row, 2 columns, that lands me right where I need to be. Very good. So we're there. Let's get rid of some of these numbers. Let's get rid of that one because I got these two. Okay, 1 row, 2 columns. 1 row, 2 columns. My displacement on the X, because this is 2 columns, 1, 2, but I've got 1 row. So I'm displaced on the X. Because it's counting this object as well, too. This is, it created this again. So row 1 row up. Not counting my master. 1 row up. So if I'm going to go twice that distance to land in the center here, is it an offset or a gap? So William says, hey, you know what? When you really created the design, why not put the half flower on all the sides and then just create the array and be done with it? Yes, William, you're exactly right. That would work 100%. That would absolutely work 100%. But I need to have you guys understand how the displacements and everything work, and I need to as well because they work for my other objects, but why not for the flower? See, if I were doing my array, I could nail every one of these corners at the same time, but now I'm trying to get half, right? I'm trying to land into these spots here. So 1 row, 2 columns. Okay, 1 row, 2 columns. So this is my row, but I have 2 columns, from here. All right, if I did 1 row, 3 columns, just so you can see what 1 row, 3 columns is, it lands, where it needs to be. And if I go 1 row, 6 columns, it's 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 columns. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, those columns, instead of being in a line, they're offset along that X by 1.999. Okay? They're displaced properly. But okay, they're displaced properly to land here. But I need my next row to land up here. Okay? So then, would that mean that if I did my 3.999 here, okay, so it's filling up these, but these are off. Okay, so now my displacement, I need to divide that back in half down here on my Y, and that should land me there. Okay, that's perfect as far as that displacement goes. Bam, 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 right? And if I did, 2 rows, 2 columns, see, that's where things start to throw off. So I need to stay with the 1 row. Until I get my offset right. Now, these rows, bam, should go up 3.999. This really should be 0. But if I do 0, it won't let me do anything. Okay. And bottom to bottom. Bottom to bottom, left side to left side. Bottom to bottom, left side to left side. That's what it would help if you look at the diagram. Left side to left side. And I'm going center to center. Durr, Laney. Lord of mercy. Left side to left side. I'm an idiot. All right, let me take measurement. Left side to left side. Horizontally. Left side. What's my magic number? All right, so we know the spacing is 3.999. We've got that. Now, look at the diagram again. Look at the diagram again. From bottom of part to bottom of part. Okay? Bottom of part to bottom of part is how it separates the rows. I need this row to jump up here. Up here. Okay, I need it to jump from here all the way up here. So, measure vertically from the bottom of this part. I wonder if that is the same distance. I think it is, right? So if I measure to the bottom of that part, would that give me my magic number? 4.006. Here, let's find out. Let's take this part. I want you guys to have an understanding. I don't mean to be confusing you. I'm going to snap. Let me get this right on center. Bear with me a second, guys. Come on now. Okay, let's take a measurement. Vertical measurement from the bottom of this part to the bottom of this part. 5.989. 5.989. Now, let's get rid of all these numbers. Okay, so what does this tell us? What does this tell us? Bottom of a row to bottom of a row. Okay, these are my rows, my displacements and everything. This is 1999. Okay? From the bottom of that part to the bottom of that part is 1999. Right? Wrong. Wrong tool. From here to there is 1.998. Okay. So that's that. Okay. I need that part to not only fill in these pieces here, but I also need them to go in here. And so I may have to do a couple of arrays. Let's look. Let's undo this. gonna end up with duplicates, but that's okay. All right, let's look at our part here completely. We've got an X offset from left of part to left of part, from left side of part to left side of part is the 3.998. That's what I need that got to be, but I need it to be divided because it's got to come here, right? When it's spacing from here to here, I need half of that. Right? From this left side to that left side. Oh, shit, Laney, come on. This is my displacement. Okay. Well, that was a good class. Let's see here. Let's go over here. Vertical, oh, no, horizontal. Left side to left side is 1.999. Okay, so that is going to be my displacement. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no changing that. That's my displacement. Okay, 1.999 because it's going to be displacing over that far. All right. Now, the big key thing is my offset up here. My offset up here from left part, or from, Y is up and down, right? From bottom to bottom. From bottom to bottom of the part is 1.99 inches. So 1.999. 1.999. Okay. So Y didn't move anywhere, and we need to go 1.999. That's what I'm talking about, Junior. That's what I'm talking about. I don't care about the duplicates. That's not a big deal. I can get rid of duplicates. But that's what I'm talking about. All right. So that's all. That's what we needed. 1.999 from left of the part to the right of the part on both the X and the Y. From the bottom to the top, top to the bottom. Bam, bam, bam. And then I need to displace my X to move everything over by that same distance. No offset or displacement in the Y. So when I copy this, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 columns. I should end up, oh wait, did I say no displacement in the Y? I mean same displacement in the Y, same as the X when I'm using offsets. Okay, so that should fill that entire array right there. Now, how now, brown cow. Now I need more rows. Okay, so this is one row. So the distance of the bottom of one part to the bottom of another on a row, we're getting it now. We're getting it. Let's measure the distance from the bottom of one part, vertical, to where I need the other row to land. 3.999. That's my magic number. I should now end up with, if I grab this guy right here, at that measurement, with my array, 1.999, 1.999, but up here, that measurement was 3.99. And we'll go 8. We'll go 8. Oh, you son of a bitch, a Rooney Tooney. So close yet so far, ladies and gentlemen. I wish whoever is texting me. You guys, am I frozen up or something? Is that why you're texting me? All right. Exactly, Nick. Well, Nick, yeah. So okay. So Nick is saying you're definitely going to have to use two different first dimensions, and you know, I think that might be right, because my proper 1.999, this gives me the proper you know, dimensions to what just happened there? Hold on, that's correct. Hold on. 4, 5, 6. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. We had it the whole time. We just weren't putting enough numbers in. Now, it created duplicates, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness. Look, all the dimensions went with it too. Let me get rid of that dimension. Ah, I'm an idiot. Sorry, guys. I've wasted all y'all's time there on that. Okay, that was a good learning practice. All right, now let's get rid of these guidelines and let's look at what we've let's look at what we've got going on here. Delete all guides. Okay. Let's delete all of our dimensions, or let me turn my dimension layer off. Hide those. Okay. Now, we've absolutely created duplicates. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay? But what we've got here is we have a offset from left side to left side of the 1.99 inches. We've got an offset on the Y from the bottom of one part to the other of 1.99 inches. Which then, you know, created that spacing that we need. And then our displacement on X and Y filled in as well. So if I would have looked at this earlier, knowing I knew what the offset was. I don't know why I didn't look at it and look at those numbers. 3.999 doesn't play a role at all. That was the measurement. That's the distance between center to center. Here, and I don't know why I kept wanting to go back to it. We needed the offset distance, and all we had to do from there is just create how many rows, how many columns to fill in the blanks. What? Blow your mind. Here, let's delete this guy. Let's delete him. Let's delete this guy. I just wasted a whole many hours. But let's we know this, right? Okay, we know that. Bam, that fills in our array. But let's go back. Let's go back. Not that far. Let's go back to when we had our original array. What William Edlin was stating earlier was that if we had put half the circle, you know, half of our center design, if we would have centered it, you know, on the two sides and rotating it, you know, 90 degrees or what have you, but if we would have had that, oops, don't do that. If we would have had that positioned, you know, center on each side, you know, same thing over here, hold down that control key and rotate that clockwise. If we'd have had this part, and of course this one would be down, but I didn't make my I didn't hold the control key down on the last one. But if we would have had them in position when we created that array, Would it not have created all the parts and everything that we needed? Yes, it would have. Okay, from the beginning. But at this stage, you know, what we were trying to do was, I didn't have those halves on my, you know, in my original design. I didn't have those halves there. So when we created this array, it left all these voids. We were trying to figure out, okay, how do we fill those voids in using the array tool? What we discovered after an hour of time wasted was, you know, I'm using an offset here. An offset is from the left of one part to the left of the other. What does that space need to be? So if I would have properly measured from left to left, I would have gotten that number, which I did. But I had that number 3.999 and 3.998. I had that in my head, right? I had it just in there. And it had to be in one or the other, one or the other, one or the other. But that wasn't true. Our offset for both X and Y just needed to be displaced the same amount. Just like when we created the array to begin with on the other array, on that other layer. You know, on this layer here, when we created that displacement, it's the same thing. And I don't know what in the heck I was thinking and why I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I wasted your time and mine. I apologize. But the displacement just had to be that distance, that one distance from left to right, left side to left side, and bottom to bottom, right? Which is that 1.99, 1.99. And it just had to be displaced the same amount. Once you did that, you create however many rows, however many columns, and you create your copy. Okay, fill in the blanks. Now, of course, it's going to fill in all of the spots, you know, even the ones that already have flowers in them. So that's what has happened, is duplicates have been created. All we do at this point is we right click and select all those duplicate vectors. Okay, and we hit delete to delete. And first of all, before we do that, we've got to join everything. We've got some open vectors and stuff. Let's go to our join tool. And oops. Bear with me. Okie dokie there, buddy. Roll. Join tool. Okay, it's not going to let me join. So, right click, select all duplicates. No duplicates in the design. I've got groups. I got to ungroup these groups. Ungroup. It won't show you duplicates and things inside of groups. Ungroup your groups and all that stuff. And I should be able to select all these and ungroup. Okay. Now select all the duplicates. See that nice array of pinks and blacks, you know, and everything. Once they're all selected, delete those duplicates and things. And now we still have more duplicates, so let's we've still got some things grouped together, so let's select all duplicates. Now, notice that this is off kilter just a little bit. That's why it's not showing it as a duplicate, because they're not overlapping perfectly. So 1.999 has got me off just a little bit. I bet you if I went the 1.998, it would be right. So We're going to do it. We're going to do it. 1.998. 1.998. 1.998. And if we look at our vectors, oh, they're just a little off, aren't they? Those guys are dead on. Well, that's because they're all by themselves. What do you think? That's 2? I think that's 2 instead of 1.999. Let's find out. Now that I know that all the numbers need to be the same, right? So we just change those around. And still a little off. Not too much. But that's all right. Let's go back to our now you're like, hey, wait a minute, you're putting 1.998 in the other boxes. I am. See, this is the new array that was created, and it's a little high. Oh. Unfortunately, which is fine. I don't care if it's off a little bit. That's not gonna. I'm not gonna be able to tell that, you know, 5 or that 1/1000th of an inch. But for duplicates to be detected, when I, you know, ungroup these patterns and everything, for me to be able to select duplicate vectors and to be able to delete them all easily, it oh. Oh, hey, who's the idiot? Watch this. Let's undo that. Watch this stuff. I don't care if it's off that 10,000th of an inch, right? Let me take these guys right here and ungroup them. Right? Watch this. Are you gonna ungroup, 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 ungroup? I'm just gonna select the flowers and get rid of all of them. All these groups, all these groups. That was my fault. I grouped everything together. $1.999. Ditter. All right, enough playing around. Okay, let's get this thing trimmed up to what we want. I'm gonna split these in half, and I need flowers on this side, man. I need flowers on this side. I'm not even gonna bother with that. Split that in half. All right, let's select everything. Lord have mercy, we got to move on. I got other patterns and other playthings to make. Okay, so with those selected first, let's make sure we select our rectangle last. Oh, you son of a gun. Select our rectangle last. Trim. Clear everything outside of the boundary. Okay. All right. Let's undo that for a minute. I got to get rid of some more groups. Man, I got a lot of groups in here. I don't know why I have so many groups. Ungroup, 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 ungroup. So everything should be ungrouped right now. There should be no duplicates. Select all duplicate vectors. Oh, there are some. Delete those duplicates. Select all duplicate vectors. There should be none. Perfect. Select all of this. Hold down the shift key. Uncheck the box and check it again. And clear. There we go. Bob's your uncle. All right. I want to V-carve this so bad just to see what it looks like. F9 to center. Okay, now on my rectangle here, I always offset it outward a bit. So we're gonna offset outward, deleting the original, by 1/4 of an inch. And notice that on my upper row here in this corner, I have open vectors, right? Because they were half flowers. They weren't, I didn't create them in the array and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to still create my offset of my 1/4 inch, but I'm not going to delete that inside run, because I'm going to use that to trim too, and all to close off my my vectors and everything, and stuff. And so all I have to do is just kind of go through. Now I'll delete the rest of this after I get this whole top row done. Just the two inside parts of the flower, these outside lines, two inside parts of the flower, the outside line, so on and so forth. I just have to trim that. And if I would have closed those vectors off before I created the array, blah, 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 I wouldn't have had to redo that, right? So little steps that you take will do well for you in, oh, you stupid ass. Will do well for you when, we're trimming. Now up here, Dagnabbit. Stand by. Do I have to trim all the way around, man? I don't want to trim all the way around. So close your vectors off before you create your array. Less work, less time. I really want to literally go all the way back to the beginning and just recreate it from scratch. Now that I see the error of my ways. And I appreciate everyone putting in feedback, because you were right, Nick. I mean, you had the numbers. You were right on all accounts. I kept throwing that 399 in. I kept throwing that, the size of the flower in, the 2 point, what have you. You called it early on, and for some reason I'm an idiot. I didn't see it. All right, so let's get in here. What a lesson. And this is a waste of time. And it's my fault. Because if I would have closed the flower vectors off and blah, 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 if I would have done right, always, you know, think ahead, try to think ahead the best you can. But regardless of the, oh, what happened there? Ooh, don't do that. Gotta go into node editing on that one. Stand by. Okay, let's not have to do that too many more times. Is this one the same way? No, didn't think so. All right, so is everything clean, everything clean, everything clean all the way around? Because I want to carve this now. After I want to see what it looks like after all that work. I'm missing a flower. I'm just gonna take this, hold down my control key. And I'm going to snap this bad boy into place. Okay. So we've got a pretty unique looking pattern here. Everything seems to be closed off. Let me make sure I don't have any open vectors. Select all open vectors. If I come in here to my join tool, I have 81 open vectors here. And if I join them, I'm going to have 40 closed vectors and 40 open. And let's see. Oh man, I've done created a havoc. All vectors. Oh, that's my duplicates. Hold on a second. I got that one under control. Select all duplicates. Select all open vectors. That's those little lines around the perimeter. I can just, while they're selected, I can delete them. Okay. So now I should have 260 closed vectors. Yay! All right. Gosh, what a nightmare scenario that was. Let's VCard this and let's see what we end up with. Yeah, it looks like wallpaper, right? But we started out with 3-inch diameter circles, a straight line, and with a little bit of mirroring and array and everything, we end up with this. You know, we started out with a very simple leaf pattern with a circle to create a nice little floral design and everything, little floret and all that stuff. Now notice that my pattern here, everything joined correctly, or carved correctly, except for these 4 spots down here. And that's because, and the reason why I didn't carve that backwards is because this is an open vector here surrounding this, and I need to go in and change that on these. So a slight off of spacing. You see the blue, it's hard to see the blue cut through there, but slightly off on the spacing. Let me open this back up on those vectors and everything. This should carve, skip, carve, and it's not because these points are not closing off. So it should carve between these two lines, or I'm sorry, carve around these two lines and skip this to carve in here and then skip this. And it's not carving in here because it's not showing it as a closed vector, these 4 points and everything here. I can go back in and trim and join those two ends, or node edit and trim like I did before. If we go in here and select on this, and if I look, no, it's closed. Well, what the hell's open? Come on, Snuggle Bunny. What is it? It's always got to be one. Oh, I bet you it's the overlap. All right, if I go into node editing on this, and if I pull this down, not so much. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to do that. So I'm going to do it like this. Let's get out of node editing. On those 4, I got to do them a little bit differently. Should end up with 4 blank spaces. But I don't. I still get the flowers. Okay. And then if I select I shouldn't have to do this, but a little glitch somewhere. It's going to be in the vectors, but we can resolve it. If I VCard that, oh, one more. Okay. So I have to look at those vectors to see what that anomaly is. Yeah, you could put letters in the blank one. You could do all kinds of things. But you know, so that's the pattern carved in this reverse here. Let's take a look at if we were to get rid of the border. All right, that one definitely has to have a flat depth. Big spots in between there, so I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch. My 4 flowers, those were the ones that were causing the issues. So what I'm going to do is open that back up. I'm not going to put a flat depth. I do have an issue with these 4 guys here. And stand by, guys. Not freezing up over there, am I? Am I like a robot on your screen, or am I freezing up? No, I'm not. All right. So let's let me zoom in here. This small stuff is kicking my butt. If, that's a big if, I know what the problem is. These vectors, see how these tubes, are not tubes, but you know, the actual, how they're closed, right? They're closed and closed. These two here are not closed together. You know, they're not one symmetrical line, and it should be. That's what the problem is with these 4 down here. And that's easily to go back and do a little bit of node editing and join them up and everything. But in the meantime, I can just calculate this. It'll leave those 4. It better not carve those 4. Flat depth, calculate. All right, so I got 4 vectors to fix. Okay. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to fix. So that would be pattern number 2. I think I like the first way better, but second way doesn't look too shabby. All right, so let's see about how to fix errors and all real quick. So what it is if we look at how these vectors are selected and all, if I were to select on this, notice how it's all one continuous vector, okay? And so what that means is see, these vectors are closed off, and it means this end needs to connect to this end, and that end needs to connect to that end. So let's go into node editing, and let's cut the vector here. Okay, select on this one as well, and cut the vector, and let's move this. Let's zoom in close so we can see what's happening here. So we've got these 2 vectors that are, you know, cut and things, And then we have this one that we've got to cut as well. And that basically creates, you know, 2 vector points and everything. And what I should be able to do is, let's uncross that first, is take and snap this one to that one. Bring this one and snap it to that one. And if I want to, I can bring them a little bit closer, type of deal, you know, however so much. And I should now be able to select that and this and go into my join and join it as one. Okay, so that fixes that one. Same thing over here, rinse and repeat for the other 4. So go into node editing, right click on this point here and cut the vector. Move it to the side a little bit so we can zoom in tight. Move it to the side a little bit now that we've cut the vector, so you can see, move this one to the side as well. So we can click on this point here and cut it also. With that cut, now I can move and snap this line to that line to that, and then I should be able to actually bring them a little bit closer. So let's bring this one over and all. And now with those vectors selected and these vectors selected, I can go into the join tool and those 2 open vectors join together as one. One more time, we got 3 more to do. Let's go ahead and get her done. Node editing, hit the letter N on your keyboard so I don't have to keep going back to the menu. Cut the vector, pull this to the side a little. Let's zoom in so we don't have to pull it away so far. Let's pull it back. Pull this one off a bit so we can see the other node here, and then that will allow us to snap, and then I'm going to actually move these back closer. There we go. A little closer. And with those selected, hold down the hit the escape key to get out of node editing. Select these 2 vectors and join them together as one. All right, 2 more to go. Node N for node editing. Go in here, right click on that node, cut the vector, or hit the letter C, either one. Pull the, let's zoom in nice and tight. Pull these out a little bit so we can see this endpoint of this vector, so we can cut it. And let's bring this one back into reality over here. And now we can take and snap those together, and move it a little bit closer. Let's zoom in a little tighter so we can move it a little bit closer. This one too. Snap them together. And then hit your escape key to get out of there. Select those 2 sets of vectors and hit join to close. And then let's do the last one. N for node editing. C for cut vector. Pull this to the side. Pull that to the side. Click on this vector. Cut it. Pull this over. Keep that one there. Let's move this one over. Snap him to here. Let's bring this over a little bit closer and snap him to there. Good enough for government work. Hit your escape key to get out of that. Select those 2 sets of vectors. Open up your join tool and join. Okay, so now with those open vectors, if I were to want to carve this panel and everything, I can now carve them adequately. And I didn't want to put a flat depth in there, dadgummit, but that's okay. We'll put a flat depth in there. But and then I don't have any errors, and everything. I just had to close and clean up those vectors and stuff. But nevertheless, let's get those lines in there. Nice little panel, for whatever the case may be. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And and all that wonderful stuff. Shoo doggy. That was a nightmare, wasn't it? I'm going to group all that together now so I can move that. I don't need to group it to move it, but I want to move it to a new layer. And I'm going to call this Design 2. And I'm going to turn the visibility off on that layer and click OK. And let's see what we got for questions. All right, so Nick is, I've been carpenter for 11 years. One thing you learn, if you're not making mistakes, you're not working hard enough. Very good, that's true. They do cross and everything, and what Todd is saying is, he was talking about the lines weren't on their tangents on earlier when we the little cleanup that I had to do on the sides and stuff. But if we were to let's get let's turn, didn't I turn that layer off? Sorry. Let's get back into this layer here, and let's take a look at one more. Pretty straightforward. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go too crazy on this one. Okay, but I'm gonna take and draw a rectangle. I'm gonna take and draw an ellipse. Not that big. And let's get that centered up. On my ellipse, I want it, if I hold my shift key down, I want to come out. I want to come a little bit wider, about like that. And on my rectangle, I want to go into node editing on my rectangle, and I want to grab that center node and kind of pull it up. It would help if I pulled them up equal distance, so bear with me a second. 1/2 inch up, 1/2 inch down. Okay, let's take this and get out of node editing mode. Select this, and let's make sure that we are centered. Use the alignment tool and align to a selection, another object. I want to center, which we are. And then I want to weld those two together. Okay, so I've got this kind of general shape here. I'm going to offset this shape inward, distance of a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, sharp corners and all that wonderful jazz and everything. And I want to, let me get a general idea of what my shape is going to look like here. Bear with me a second. Okay. Trying for this diamond pattern here. So I don't want to displace anything on that. So let's Control Z this back to 1. All right, let's make this a little bit smaller. It's a little bit too big. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller. And do I want to squish it any? I want to squish any a little bit. Maybe like that. There we go. All right. So let's move this down here. And what is my size? My size, and I don't need to even look at that. I can go right into the array tool. My size is 1.6761, 1.6761, and 2.2185, 2.2185. And I want, I'm going to go 11 and 11. Okay. And almost want to overlap those a little bit more. I do. I am going to back them off. Let me undo that. I'm going to back them off by 20 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to make that 1.65 and 2.19. Right? That's 20 thousandths of an inch. Okay. And that should give me this slight little overlap right there. Okay. On this pattern. All right. Let's break this down. Let's get our rectangle in here. Or let's do a circular shape this time. Like an ellipse mirror wall art panel or something. Let's go with nice little ellipse shape. Let's get that centered on the board here. Let's get these guys centered on the board. Let's get that centered. One more time. Turn off that ellipse. All right. So I want to, with those selected, I want to come in here and select my ellipse. I want to come in and subtract and clear outside of the boundary. And then I want to offset that ellipse outward. Doesn't have, I do that, guys. I offset it, just to offset it, whatever the case may be. Okay. You know, for my pattern and all. Now I've got these little overlaps and everything. And do I necessarily want to go in and trim? I should be able to select my rows such as this, and I should, and let me make sure all is correct. I should be able to weld at least two overlap. Oh, look at there. Okay, wonderful. If that's the case on all of them, is that the case on all of them? On all my little triangles it is. Well, that's good. Hold on a second. Then I can just go right through there and hit delete. I can go right through here and hit delete. Through here, hit delete. I am selecting, what I'm selecting, so you can see, is I'm actually selecting these little overlapping diamonds, right? So they can get deleted. They're not they're kind of connected to each other, but not to anything else. So I can select them all and delete them. That way I don't have to deal with, you know, messing with, you know, those overlaps. They should have these open, nice pathways, this nice zigzag pathway and everything. Now, as far as these guys here are concerned, I should be able to now select these two rows, right? And I should be able to weld them together. And did it not? Son of a gun. Hold on a second. Is it not going to get rid of the overlap? If I select that row and that row, let me see, it's going to do inside the vectors, and these are kind of outside. It's outside and outside, but that's inside. Don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. If I can't use the weld tool, that's all right. What could be my boundary is I could take, No, I need to trim them. No matter what, they got to be trimmed together. I can't subtract and close off that vector. I need it to be open. So I got to do it a little bit longhand, but that's okay. Oops, I got a whole row of diamonds up here. Bear with me a second. Delete. And oh damn, I missed quite a few rows. Hold on a second. Delete. Okay. That's all right. It's not going to take that long. Trim. 1, 2 clicks. 1, 2 clicks. You know, a couple clicks here and there. Not a bad thing. Just a couple clicks. You know, going over and cleaning them up. Joining them up. Join, join, join. Oop. Not bad. I only went 11 rows, right? Just kidding. All right, couple more. Oh. Here. Let's do this. That way, while I'm in the same area, I'm just going up and down, up and down. That way, when I move the page over, now this is just a circle or an ellipse and a rectangle. The rectangle had both ends brought out by a 1/2 inch. The ellipse and everything was centered. And then this array with no offsets, you know, no offsets or anything, was and this will go, I don't want to do that. Those will stay, they're right at the cusp. All right, those will stay. All right, so let's VCard this and let's see what we get here. All right, so this is the reverse, and of course you would use a flat area clearance tool. Use a flat area clearance tool and everything. I think I'm gonna like it the other way better. So that's the reverse of it. Let's go in here and let's take the ellipse border away. That's gonna be a profile cut. And let's calculate this and let's look at this a little bit better. I like it better this way. Okay, and now let's do a profile cut so we can kind of see this egg. Did I create an Easter egg? Is that what I just did? I don't know. Looks like one. Cut out. That's a decorative way to create some decorative Easter eggs, isn't it? But what we're going to do is, with this, now we're going to come in, okay? We're going to take and offset that ellipse inward. We're going to offset that ellipse inward, and we're going to go a 1 inch offset inward. All right. More. Let's go 2 inches inward. There we go. And that is going to be a pocket cut. I'm going to cut 1/8 of an inch deep. Okay. And let's turn off this fill color for a minute. We'll put the fill color on that. Let's oops. No fill on that one. Fill color. blue on that and turn off that toolpath just so you can see. Here I got little dots in my pocket. Let's go 1.13. Doesn't matter. You'll see where we're getting at here in a second. Did I miss one? Somebody said I missed one. I might have to go back and trim one up. Okay. All right. So, you know, now within here, what's my depth? 1.3. Let's go 0.15. Oh. No suitable vector selected. All right, and so let's add some text in here. Let's see here what we're gonna do for text. And we could clear these, and by the way, so you don't have to waste a whole lot of time carving and everything. Just like we cleared the outside, we could clear the inside of a vector to create the border and just V-carve this outer part. Let me show you that just so you can see. If we select our, let's close this text tool. If we were to select our design, turn that border off, select the inside oval last, and go into our trim tool and clear inside the boundary. Okay, it'll clear that way. That way we can, you know, we just have a, you know, just a small V-carve area to do and all for this frame, this plaque, whatever the case may be. I am going to take and offset this inward about 20 thousandths of an inch. I do like a little bit of, I don't like lines on top of lines type of thing. If I want it to be symmetrical, this was a 1/4 inch offset. I could come in here and offset that inward 0.25, right, to give me kind of a little bit of a uniform frame all the way around, a little bit of a decorative lightning type look, whatever you wanted to call it to be. And of course, I used a square and a circle, ellipse and all. You could make this pattern whatever you want. It could be that floral pattern. It could be anything, right? So let's go ahead and calculate that pocket once again, and let's reset this preview and preview these two toolpaths along with my profile cut one more time to get back to where I was. Okay, and so with, you know, the text, could basically dadgummit, is my cap locks on? My cap locks is on. Well, let me learn how to spell there, Delaney. Let's get this centered up. Let's break up this text block. And then we're going to call it a night after this. Let's get home up here. I'd like home there, and I'd like that to be a little bit of a different font. Where's my newest one? Bear with me, guys and girls. Bear with me, bear with me. A little bit of V-carve action on that. No flat depth. Alright, let's turn that material color off. Oh, gotta have a start depth there, buddy row, 0.15. We're starting at 0.15, cutting down in that pocket area. That makes a little bit more sense or what have you. But, you know, the whole point of that is have a little fun with it. You know, use your array tools to help you create some really unique patterns and things. And those patterns could be borders, they could be box sides, they could be panels. You know, panels for the front of cabinets or doors, or you know, they could be the outside rim of a picture frame or a plaque. You know, there's so many different things, and it just it really, you know, by being able to take and create some really unique shapes, we can create some really unique patterns. And now this is pretty much considered a repeating pattern, right? You know, you have repeating patterns and things, and places like that craftsmanspace.com that I talked to you about, you know, they have vectors of repeating patterns, Google search repeating patterns, things like that. And if you don't want to make them using your array tools, or a variety of array tools and all, if you don't want to make them, you can bring those in as images or pictures or DXF files or SVGs. That Craftsman Space has you know, repeating patterns and things, and they have different file formats. You know, it's free, where you can get some unique patterns and stuff. But you could really do some really nice, neat things. And the last thing that I would do to give this its finishing touch, is I need to know what the distance is from here to here, which should be 1/4 of an inch, right? And it should be 1/4 of an inch. That's what my offset was. So the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to come in with a profile toolpath. I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch deep with a 90-degree V-bit, round over bit, V-bit, whatever you want to do. And I need that V-bit to step over. It's a 1/2 inch diameter, so I need it to step over negative 0.25. That should be a negative number, negative 0.25. And calculate, preview that selected toolpath. And my step over, hold on a second, my step over was oh, my cut depth was too deep, you son of a gun. Hold on a minute there, my cut depth was too deep. 0.1875. Yeah, I should be good. And then the step over was a little much, so point. All right, let's reset that preview and let's look at the final piece. All right, now again, the center part of that decorative pattern does not need to be cut if you clear it away, you know, like we did if you subtract that. But, you know, I'll recalculate the toolpath on that a little bit later. And then I should end up with a nice chamfer. Let's get rid of this, you know. And I wanted that chamfer to come back a little bit, but my bit won't allow for it. If I go any further, I won't get that nice transition from here to there. But still, you know, I would finish that off with a chamfer or a round over. A nice round over wouldn't look too bad either. But that's how I'd finish that one off. Alrighty. It's 10:15, guys. We're going to say goodnight, but let's stop for a second and ask any questions. Let's open it up for Q&A for a little bit. Any questions on anything that we've covered tonight? And did you pick up, yes or no on this one? Did you pick up anything that you may see yourself using in the future with any of the array tools, whether it be the circular array tool and working with clocks or things like that, your copy along vector tool, or the array tool using offsets and all, now that we kind of understand a little bit more about the part. Yes, so Nick asked the question, does deselecting the border always reverse the carve? So understand this, Nick, I'm doing a V-carve toolpath, and a V-carve toolpath cuts between two lines. And so it cuts between two lines, skips between two lines, cuts between two lines, skips between two lines, right? So if I were V-carving this, let's say that, this was my, area that I'm V-carving here. If I were to V-carve this, it would cut between these two lines, skip between these two lines, cut between these two lines. So it would basically cut all the way around my pattern, leaving these lines raised. If I deselect, my boundary or border, and the only reason I had the inside one selected is so it didn't V-carve in here, right? But if I were to deselect my border and just, have my design selected and stuff, then now it's going to carve opposite. It's going to carve this area away, leaving these areas raised. So yes, if you have a boundary around a V-carve design, that creates a raised effect, just like if I put a boundary around the word home. An ellipse within ellipse. Okay, if I were to select that V-carve and that boundary and everything, I'd absolutely have to have a flat depth of some sort. But when I calculate, it's going to create the reverse. Instead of carving the letters in, it will raise those and carve around the letters and everything. So yes, deselecting the border does always create the reverse effect, or having a border, whether you have a border or don't have a border around a boundary, affects the way it's going to cut. Is it going to be kind of a reverse image of itself, whether it's cutting in or not cutting in? If I were to turn off that boundary on this and calculate that toolpath, then I'm getting the reverse of it, where it's actually carving the letters, leaving everything else raised. Okay. All right, let's see here. Good, David and William and Sylvia. Good seeing you that. Definitely things I'm going to test. I want to make a new dragon scale for some CNC. All right, Jerry, dragon scale. One of the things that you can look at is when you're doing your dragon scale and stuff, is create your vector, and let me see if I can. I got to go into node editing on this one. If I cut the vector here, and I go in now, I should be able to trim that away and that away. I need to trim away those two too. Okay. And if we were to and I'll just use the control key for this, but you know, if we were to duplicate this pattern, overlapping them, you know, in whatever configuration, whatever your offset and everything would be, to create that you know, scaled pattern. And this one would actually be, bear with me, I keep hitting, I'm trying to hold the shift key and I keep you know, to whatever effect that, you know, those scales are and all. And then, you know, even if I were to come in and, here, let's do it a little bit smarter. If I were to come in here and trim this away to create that shape, and I take that shape and I offset it inward, let's go 1/8 of an inch. Outwards fine too as well. And then I take and I were to array that. I don't know, am I at a lean? Am I at a lean? No, that's straight across. Man, I'm looking at it like, man, that looks like it's leaning. But if we were to take our, you know, array tool and I'll do just 4 and 4 right now. And don't forget, you know, let's see here. I want to offset, I technically really want to offset kind of half of the size. So 2.3745 divided by 2 equals, and 1.4184 divided by 2 equals. And, you know, I don't really necessarily need any displacement unless you want to, but you can create that dragon scale. Now, of course, you're going to have overlapping lines and things, and where those lines overlap. Now, what you can do to circumvent that some is you can do like 1 and 1 to create like 4 or 3, you know, stacks of them, and then trim them up and then array that and everything. But you can create, now if I want, see, those don't look like scales, they're not displaced. Scales are kind of uneven and things in some ways and all. So maybe if we came in here with that same scenario, but if I displace this 1.1872 and copy this, we get more of that scale type pattern. Now again, where we're overlapping and stuff, you may have to come in and trim, you know, to open up those vectors and lines and stuff. But you know, it's using the array tool is kind of a good way to kind of create kind of that scale pattern and stuff. You know, things like that. Think about that, you know, when you're looking at it and stuff. Think about like how you could create that using the array tool and stuff. You know, what a scale would look like to you if they, you know, like a, you know, what the way they're overlapping one another and things like that. You know, Alan, thank you very much. Appreciate it. I hope you're still here for me to hear me say goodbye. Let's see here. Also, a little off topic. Why do you use VCard Pro versus Aspire? Nick, I have all of the software. I have Vectric, VCard, Desktop Pro, and Aspire because, you know, I teach. Working in VCard Pro is just a little bit more relatable to everybody because people with Aspire can do what they can do in Pro. But if I was in Aspire doing things, some of the things that I would be doing in there might not be able to be done in Pro, so that leaves all the, or Desktop, and that leaves all the Pro and Desktop people out, you know, right? So I work in Pro, which is kind of a middle ground, and Pro has the same tools as Desktop, and Aspire. Desktop just has a few little tools, like it doesn't have the gadgets or it doesn't have the nesting tool, but pretty much everything else is the same, you know, and things like that. So it's more relatable if I work in Pro versus Aspire. Now, when I'm doing a modeling class and things like that, I'm absolutely working in Aspire. you know, for those modeling classes and all. But this can be done in all 3 softwares, so I choose Pro as my platform to work with to be relatable to all 3 programs. And that's why. Okay. All right. Well, good. Yeah. No. I use my Aspire when modeling and working with models and creating, you know, things like that. If I only had Aspire, then I would use Aspire for everything, right? I have all 3 because I teach them, and working in Pro is a good middle ground for both companies, or for both programs. If I'm in Aspire, I'm leaving people out, so on and so forth, like I just said. And so I want it to be a nice, fair middle ground. All that. Yeah. So I hope to see some cool creative frames or projects come from this, you know, different things. And by the way, the one that we had so much trouble with, you know, complicated with, remember, this was just circles with, I think I had a small, you know, 1/4 inch spacing, you know, and then we cut every opposite side to create that, you know, back and forth kind of pattern with that, and everything, you know. So very simple to do, circles and shapes and all. Take some shapes, you know, and just start freehand and start seeing, you know, like if I create a shape, you know, what would happen if I mirror this or copy this and all? What does it look like? Like that heart, just mirroring it to create the 2 ends of the heart, and then turning that design 90 degrees created that first pattern. You know, if we reset the preview and we go back to our initial design, reset, go back into our 3D view here and preview that initial, sorry, reset, and go back into our initial design here. You know, that you know, just that heart shape and everything, just that heart shape, you know, just mirroring it or flipping it down, basically mirroring it down, and connecting those 2 together and making that and rotating it and all, creating that rotating pattern and all. Just little things like that, little things that make a big difference in the way a design will come out or the way a pattern will come out, and it becomes a repeatable pattern and stuff, and all. And no problem, Nick. Appreciate the video. It was much fun to watch and able to ask questions while you teach. I will stay tuned for sure. I'm a question kind of guy, so I apologize. No, I love questions. I wish everybody would ask questions. You know, so but I'm assuming if they don't ask questions, it's because they know this stuff, and you know, don't, you know, or know, you know, well enough about it. They don't have to ask. But I encourage everybody to ask questions. I really wish more and more, because it doesn't have to be, the questions you ask at the end of the Q&A do not have to relate to what we're talking about or what the topic of the night is. It can be about anything. And I don't mind spending a few minutes showing, you know, answering those questions, even if I have to demonstrate it a little bit and all. So please, yeah, the more questions, the merrier. I appreciate that, Nick, and everybody and all. Jerry, yeah, man, give it a test. You know, dragon scales for a wine glass base would be cool. For sure. All right. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen, before we close this to a night? We have 2 minutes before 10:30, and I'd like to close it out at 10:30. So up to this point, any questions at all? All right. Let's see. I'm going to wait till my voice actually catches up to you where I'm asking if there's any questions, because there is a delay. So stay tuned. I'll take a sip of my Dr. Pepper while I'm waiting for the delay to catch up to y'all. All right. Celia, you're welcome. Thank you. Dave Garbett, thank you. All right, everybody. It looks like that's where we're going to end. Until next time, see you soon. I want to thank you for joining us tonight on Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. If you're watching Spindle TV on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. You can find out more information about our training and products by visiting us at www.digitalwoodcarver.com.